The year without a summer. Imagine a summer that feels like winter. Crops fail, fruits are left unripened, and everyone wonders what happened to the sunshine. This is precisely what happened in 1816, known as the year without a summer. It all started with the eruption of Mount Tambora in Indonesia in 1815, which was so powerful that it spread ash and gas into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight across the globe. This led to unreasonably cold temperatures around the rest of the world. In North America and Europe, the effects were severe. Snow fell in June, frost was common in July and August, and crops failed, leading to food shortages and skyrocketing prices. In Europe, the climate disaster resulted in economic struggles following the Napoleonic Wars, leading to civil unrest and food riots. In Switzerland, the harsh conditions inspired Mary Shelley to write the world's first science fiction novel called Frankenstein. In Germany, Karl Dreiss invented a Dreisine, a precursor to the bicycle, due to a shortage of oats for horses. Meanwhile, in the art world, painters like J.M.W. Turner created stunning sunsets filled with unusual colors caused by volcanic particles in the sky. The year without a summer reminded us how connected we are to nature's whims. While it was a tough time for many, it also sparked creativity as people found ways to cope with the unexpected chill. The War on Jenkins Ear. The War on Jenkins Ear has one of the quirkiest origins of any conflict. It all started in 1731 when a British merchant captain named Robert Jenkins had his ear cut off by Spanish coast guards. The Spanish were cracking down on smuggling in the Caribbean, and poor Jenkins got caught in the crossfire. He brought his severed ear back to England, preserved in a jar to show the British Parliament. Fast forward to 1739, when tensions between Britain and Spain were heating up over trade and colonial expansion. The story of Jenkins' Ear became a rallying cry for the British, leading to a declaration of war. The conflict was part of a larger struggle for supremacy in the Americas, leading to battles in the Caribbean and along the coast of Spain and Georgia. By this time, the Spanish Empire was ruling almost half of America and the majority of the Caribbean, and thus, it wasn't above the Britons to use a severed ear as an excuse to wage their final effort against the ruling empire. The war did not change much in the grand scheme of things, but it did glorify the ongoing rivalry between European powers. Despite its grim beginnings, the War on Jenkins' Ear is still a unique example of how personal grievances can grow into full-blown international conflicts when it comes to people with authority and power. Tulip Mania. Tulip Mania in 1637 was the world's first recorded financial bubble, centered around something as simple as flowers. In the Dutch Golden Age, tulips became all the rage, admired for their vivid and bright colors and unique patterns. People from all walks of life were so captivated by these blooms that they started buying and selling tulip bulbs at astronomical prices. At the peak of its craze, a single tulip bulb could cost as much as a house. Everyone wanted a piece of the action, from wealthy merchants to common laborers, hoping to strike it rich in the tulip trade. Although botanists of the time were actively interested in tulips, they didn't fully understand the science behind how tulip petals develop mixed colors known as breaking. Interested in producing these unique patterns, growers tried everything imaginable. Some sprinkled colored pigments into the soil, hoping the tulips would absorb them, while others attempted to sew bulbs of different colors together. There were also those who relied on superstition, using strange mixtures as fertilizers, hoping to repeat past successes. But, just like any bubble, it couldn't last forever. In February 1637, the market suddenly collapsed, and tulip prices plummeted. People who had invested their life savings in tulips found themselves bankrupt. This flowery fiasco was a colorful story of how economic bubbles can form and burst, showing us that sometimes people can get carried away by the charm of something as simple as a flower. The London Beer Flood. Imagine a tidal wave of beer sweeping through the streets of London. It sounds like a dream come true, but it was a foamy disaster for the city in 1814. The London Beer Flood occurred when a massive vat at the Mew & Company brewery burst, unleashing a torrent of over 135,000 gallons of beer into the St. Giles district. This unexpected beer flood caused chaos as the wave of ale crashed through homes and businesses, knocking people off their feet and flooding basements. Tragically, 8 people lost their lives, and the community was left to clean up the sticky mess. The incident happened because the brewery's vats were poorly maintained and weakened by age. Although the brewery wasn't held accountable due to legal loophole, the flood highlighted the need for better safety standards in industrial operations. Despite its somber nature, the London beer flood became part of the city's folklore, often remembered with a mix of shock and sarcasm. Even today, this tragic story remains a curious piece of history, a story of when beer became both a blessing and a curse on the streets of London. The Salem Witch. The Salem Witch Trials of 1692 were a dark and chilling chapter in American history. Fear and superstition ran wild in a sleepy Puritan village in Massachusetts. A group of young girls started having strange fits, screaming and contorting, and quickly accused several locals of bewitching them. In a time when belief in witches was widespread, this was enough to spark a full-blown witch hunt. The Salem village was soon gripped by hysteria as neighbors began accusing each other of witchcraft. The courts accepted spectral evidence, where accusers claimed to see the spirits of the accused causing mischief. Logic took a vacation, and things got weird fast. People believed witches were conspiring with the devil, and soon over 200 people were accused, with 19 hanged and one man, Giles Corey, pressed to death with heavy stones for refusing to plead. The trials were fueled by a strong mix of fear, religious extremism, and local rivalries. Even pets weren't safe. 2 dogs were executed on suspicion of being supernatural agents. As the paranoia spread, it became clear that this was more about personal vendettas and power struggles than sorcery. Eventually, the madness died down and people began to see the trials for the mockery they were. Many of those involved later expressed regret, and the Massachusetts colony eventually annulled the guilty verdicts and compensated the families of the accused. The Exploding Whale. The story of the exploding whale is as bizarre as it sounds. In 1970, a 45-foot, 8-ton sperm whale washed ashore near Florence, Oregon. It was already dead and decomposing, but the question remained, how to get rid of it? Local officials had a unique idea. Use dynamite to blow it up and let seagulls and other scavengers take care of the rest. However, the plan did not exactly go swimmingly. Onlookers gathered to watch what promised to be a spectacle, but they witnessed more than they bargained for. When the dynamite was detonated, chunks of whale blubber rained down on the crowd, crushing a car and sending everyone running for cover. Instead of disappearing, parts of the whale were flung far and wide, creating a stinky mess. The exploding whale became a legendary event, often cited as a prime example of how not to solve a problem. The incident was immortalized in a news report that went viral decades later when it surfaced on the internet, turning the whale's explosive end into a global joke. The Cadaver Sinid. In one of history's most surreal trials, the Cadaver Sinid of 897 was a courtroom drama like no other. Pope Stephen VI had a bone to pick with his predecessor, Pope Formosus, quite literally. He ordered Formosus's corpse to be exhumed and placed on trial, making one of the strangest episodes in the history of the Catholic Church. In a macabre spectacle that took place in Rome, Formosus's body was dressed in papal robes and seated on a throne, while a deacon stood by as his defense. Pope Stephen VI accused the deceased pontiff of perjury and serving as a bishop illegally after transferring from another diocese, which was against church law at the time. Given that Formosus was a literal skeleton in the courtroom, he was not able to defend himself, and the trial proceeded with predictable results. Formosus was declared guilty, and his papacy was annulled. As a sign of justice, the 3 fingers he used for blessings were cut off, and his body was thrown into the Tiber River. Later, sympathetic supporters of Formosus retrieved his body and gave him a proper burial. The Cadaver Sinid told just how complex and politically charged the atmosphere of the medieval papacy was, as well as showed the extreme measures some were willing to take for revenge and power. The Dancing Goats. Legend has it, we owe our beloved morning coffee to a curious goat herder named Chaldee in 9th century Ethiopia. According to the tale, Chaldee noticed his goats frolicking and dancing with unusual energy after nibbling on bright red berries from a certain bush. Chaldee was curious of the sudden behavior change and tried the berries himself. Surprisingly, he experienced a similar burst of vitality. Excited by his discovery, Chaldee shared the berries with a local monastery. The monks, initially skeptical, brewed the beans into a drink and found it helped them stay alert during long prayer sessions. The berries soon became popular as the word about this energetic bean spread far and wide, and coffee's popularity began to grow. Regardless of how accurate this legend is, it sure is a charming story of the mysterious origins of coffee. The stimulating effects of the coffee plant soon captured the attention of traders and travelers who carried it across the Arabian Peninsula and eventually to Europe, where it became the beloved beverage we know today. The story of Chaldee and his dancing goats is a happy anecdote about how an observant herder stumbled upon what would become a global necessity. Whether fact or fiction, it reminds us of how curiosity and chance can lead to some of the most delightful discoveries in history. The ban on sliced bread. Imagine waking up one morning in 1943 to find that the convenience of pre-sliced bread had been taken away. During World War II, the US faced shortages of many commodities, leading to a rather unexpected decision: banning sliced bread. In January 1943, the government declared that pre-sliced bread would be prohibited as to conserve measures to save metal for the war effort. It turns out that slicing bread required specialized machinery, which used precious steel blades. By banning the convenience of pre-sliced loaves, officials hoped to redirect resources toward the war. The move was met with public outrage. Housewives, already juggling wartime rationing, expressed their dismay through letters to newspapers and government officials. After all, who wants the hassle of slicing bread by hand, especially when sandwiches are a staple lunch? It didn't help that unsliced bread went stale faster, complicating things further. The ban, intended as a minor inconvenience in the war effort, became a major talking point and a source of widespread frustration. In March 1943, after just 47 days, the government lifted the ban due to public outcry and the realization that the savings were negligible. Operation Paul Bunyan. In 1976, the world witnessed an event that could have come straight out of a movie: Operation Paul Bunyan. This audacious military operation started on the Korean peninsula in response to the infamous Korean axe murder incident. North Korean forces had killed 2 American soldiers over the simple fact of trimming a poplar tree in the demilitarized zone. To demonstrate their power and resolve, the US and South Korea launched Operation Paul Bunyan, a carefully planned show of force named after the legendary lumberjack. On August 21st, the DMZ transformed into a scene of military might, with 23 vehicles, a company of infantrymen, and engineers armed with chainsaws heading for revenge. Above, F-4 Phantom jets roared while B-52 bombers stood ready in a calculated display of strength. The result? The tree was felled swiftly, with no shots fired. While it was not as violent as expected, this operation sent a clear message to North Korea, reminding them of the serious consequences of aggression. Which of these historical events did you find the most interesting? Did I miss anything? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. For more interesting videos, just click the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. You don't want to miss anything. See you in the next video.